This video is brought to you by Squarespace, the best all-in-one platform for all of your website building needs. Hey guys, it's Celestia, and welcome back to Art Trope Top 10s, the series where I roast the art tropes in media that I hate the most and ramble about my favorites, while poorly illustrating myself as all of them. So far we've done the best and worst of anime art tropes, Western animation art tropes, and character design tropes, and in the process created such masterpieces as the ones you're seeing on screen now. Drawing these nightmarish monstrosities is easily my favorite thing I do on this channel, so naturally I'm back at it with the newest addition to the series, the top 10 best and worst Mary Sue, or impossibly perfect character, art tropes. I promise I'll explain my use of the term Mary Sue despite its terrible reputation in a minute here, but don't worry, there will be no Sue shaming or cringe shaming, and I don't mean it as an insult, but rather just the most fitting term for the category, but we'll get to that. First though, let me take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Squarespace, a longtime partner of the channel that I've been proud to work with for a very long time now. Regular viewers know that well, because I talk about them so much that there are running jokes in the comment section that I'm basically married to Squarespace at this point. Even my wife jokes about it. It's being shipped. And it's being shipped by me too, honestly, because I love them. After using them for years to build and host my personal Duchess Celestia portfolio site, I can say with confidence that I sincerely believe they're the best website building platform out there for any artist looking to do the same. But honestly, that's just the beginning of what they have to offer. With a huge library of beautiful, professionally designed website templates in a wide variety of different categories, there's a perfect template to start building your site from no matter what you need it to be or do. Each one can be customized so extensively and easily that you can make absolutely every aspect of it your own, tailoring it to meet your exact needs and preferences, whatever they may be. With features that help you maximize your site's functionality and visual design tools that make establishing valuable brand recognition easy, there's pretty much nothing you can't do. And you can even turn it into an online store just as easily using the Squarespace Commerce platform, which lets you do everything from managing your inventory to taking sales and even to printing shipping labels. It's just as easy for your customers to pay as it is for you to sell too, since Squarespace offers all of the most popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, as well as the option to send individualized invoices to specific clients. Whether you're an artist in need of a portfolio, an entrepreneur building an online store, a creator setting up an interactive blog, or a small business owner making a landing page, Squarespace is the place to do it. And you can find out yourself by going to squarespace.com to get your own free trial today. And once you've built the perfect site that you're ready to launch, you can get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain by going to squarespace.com/DuchessCelestia, linked in the description. Thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, and please go check them out. Alright, now let's start roasting some art tropes. Like I said in the intro though, I do want to make a quick clarification about my use of the term Mary Sue. There's a timestamp on screen for you to skip to if you don't care, so feel free to do so if you want to get right into the tropes. If not, here we go. I'll make this as quick as I can. Historically, Mary Sue has usually been used as an insult towards both individuals' original characters and characters in media that are too overpowered or impossibly perfect, and referring to a character as such is generally done to mock them for being cringe. That is not the way that I'm using it. I hate that it's come to have such derogatory connotations, and I do not support the mockery of anyone's OCs for any reason, and I'm using it solely for the sake of clarity because most people are already very familiar with what it means. Top 10 best and worst original character tropes is way too broad of a category that could reasonably contain literally any character ever, and I'm specifically referring to the ones that possess a certain group of shared characteristics that are notoriously present in characters that could be categorized as Mary Sues. I'm not roasting any of them because they're present in Mary Sue characters. I'm roasting them because of my individual gripes with each one that I would have regardless of whether they were present in Mary Sue's or not. I'm roasting the things in the category, not the category. Just like how the top 10 best and worst hero and villain tropes will be based on the tropes individually, and not on the basis that it's heroes and villains who possess them. I don't agree with the Mary Sue label, and I think it's insulting and reductive, but it does nonetheless describe a very particular type of character that's associated with a very specific group of tropes, and that's the sole reason I'm using it. There will be no OC shaming in this house. Also, as always, these are just my opinions. The top 10 best tropes are the ones I like the most, and the top 10 worst are the ones I hate the most, and that's as deep as it gets. This is a for fun series that isn't intended to commentate seriously on the legitimate artistic value of any of the tropes listed, but rather to joke about what I think of them while I very messily draw them. I mean no offense to anyone who likes the ones I roast or hates the ones I love, so please don't take me or this series too seriously. God, okay, I promise I'm working on my long intro problem. It's just a very gradual process for my rambling ass. Now let's roast some art tropes. Number one of my worst, most hated Mary Sue art tropes is when the character is designed to basically just be a gender-bent version of a canon character, but then they're shipped with that canon character. No shade to gender bends as a whole, that's not what I have a problem with. What I have a problem with is the idea that the canon character would want to date someone who looks and acts exactly like them. I mean, I'm sure some would. Isaiah from Durarara would probably be more inclined to date a carbon copy of himself than anyone else in the world, and solely on the basis that they are a carbon copy of him. But in the vast majority of cases, I don't know, if I met someone who looked exactly like me and acted exactly like me, the last thing I'd want to do is date them. I'd give them the number of a good therapist, wish them well, and ask them to kindly vacate the premises and never return. In fairness, I know a lot of characters actually have self-confidence and wouldn't feel nearly as adverse to those shared traits as a result, but that still doesn't mean they'd be attracted to them. The really arrogant ones, sure, but the rest? No! I know the whole point of this trope is usually to make a self-insert OC to ship with the character that you have a crush on, and that the goal is subsequently to make them as appealing to that character as possible. No judgment, the self-insert hate is stupid and they have my full support, but why would making them exactly like that character make them appealing to them? Like, just on a purely logical level, I don't understand. And I've even done it. When I was like 12 and in love with Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist, I made a self-insert OC that was basically a female version of him because I guess I thought they'd have so much in common that they'd instantly fall in love. 14 years later, it's not shame or embarrassment that makes me look back on that with so much overwhelming regret, but confusion. Because two Edward Elrics in one room would kill each other within minutes like territorial hamsters or betta fish. His temper is shorter than he is, and I thought it was a good idea to make a character that I wanted to be his love interest have the exact same one. Why? Like, listen, if you want your OC to be a way for you to vicariously date your favorite character, I support you 100%. But I just don't think the vast majority of those favorite characters would want to date someone exactly like themselves in every way unless maybe they're Light from Death Note. The number 2 worst Mary Sue art trope is when a character is designed to be 800 different mythical creatures at the same time. Not mythical creatures in general. I refuse to submit to the cringe-shaming belief that it's embarrassing or bad to make your characters supernatural or superpowered beings, even if they're the only ones in their world that are. If you want your character to be a fairy in a world of humans, you make that character a fairy, and anyone who calls that OP and cringe can stay in their fun-hating corner where all characters have to be realistic and balanced to be enjoyable. My very specific issue is only when the characters are basically every kind of mythical creature at once. And look, I get it. We all wanted to be vampires or werewolves when Twilight came out, and some of us struggled on a deep, fundamental level to choose which one they wanted to be more. I didn't, having been embarrassingly desperate to be a vampire with no interest in werewolves right from day one, but I understand the appeal of liking a lot of mythical creatures equally, and subsequently not being able to pick just one that you want your character to be. And solving that by combining a couple? That's fair. Tons of cool fictional species have been created by combining a couple mythical creatures, and I don't understand the criticism of, oh, well, it's unrealistic for them to be a vampire and a werewolf, as if it's any less unrealistic for them to be either. The realistic possibility of the combined hybrid species existing is not the basis of my criticism of this trope. What bugs me is purely visual. When they get to a point where they're combining upwards of 5 mythical creatures into one character, it is borderline impossible to tell what they're actually supposed to be by looking at them alone. If your character has angel wings, fairy wings, red eyes, slit pupils, devil horns, troll horns, fangs, claws, scales, a mermaid tail, and elf ears, I'm gonna take 5 to 7 business days to stare at their design. Not to admire it because it's so cool, but to desperately try to figure out what I'm looking at because I am hopelessly confused. There's just so much going on with some of those angel, demon, dragon, elf, fairy, mermaid, hybrid character designs that I don't even know where to look. And I feel like there just comes a point when it ends up taking away from the coolness of each individual element by adding so many. It's like when I'm making a stir fry and I can't decide whether I want my vegetables to be garlicky, spicy, or sweeter like teriyaki. So I throw so many spices at them that I can't actually perceive the taste of any of those spices through the overwhelming experience of having all of them attack my taste buds at once. Before I move on though, quick shout out to one of my stupidest pet peeves that's not about the art or design and therefore doesn't get to be on this list, but is tangentially related so it gets a mention. When the character is some kind of a mythical creature in a world where those don't exist, and none of the other characters find their existence alarming. This is 100% just a me problem that no one else in their right mind would take issue with, but if I lived my entire 27 years believing with confidence that vampires didn't exist, and then Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway walked into my local Tim Hortons and skipped the tried and true double-double in favor of the cashier's very refreshing blood instead, my first response would not be, oh my god, she's so cool. It would be, oh my god, her existence means everything I thought I knew about the world was wrong, before immediately deteriorating into an existential crisis. And I think that's a fairly reasonable response, and yet no one in these stories or shows or narratives ever has it. But I'm rambling again, so moving on. The number 3 worst Mary Sue art trope is when the character is deliberately given no physical flaws for the sole purpose of making them beautiful. Now, hear me out. I'm not roasting them for making them beautiful. If you want everyone in the character's world to find them drop-dead gorgeous and sacrifice their firstborn sons to be with them, you do you. Mary Sues get a lot of hate for being impossibly and effortlessly beautiful to a degree that no human being could achieve in reality, and that's not hate that I agree with. It's your character, make them as hot as you want. I don't take issue with them being impossibly beautiful. I take issue with the idea that they need to be physically flawless to be impossibly beautiful. Maybe it's just because I find things like scars, stretch marks, birthmarks, and so on to be really, really cool looking, but it makes me sad when they're considered things that a character can't have if they want them to be supermodel levels of pretty. I get that this is really more of an issue with the rigidity of generally accepted societal beauty standards than anything else, and so is one more on this list, but that really just makes me hate it even more because I hate those standards so much. Like, god damn it, just let the entire cast of a show find a Mary Sue character gorgeous because they have really cool looking imperfections, rather than solely in their absence. It would open them up to so many new creative design design elements that make them unique and hot. And while I'm rambling about how society's beauty standards are holding cool character designs back from being way more badass than they could be, let's talk about the fourth worst Mary Sue art trope based on them before throwing them in the trash where they belong: the ideal body types. Again, my issue isn't with the fact that these characters are so frequently designed to be impossibly beautiful. I have no interest in gatekeeping hotness, I can't express that enough. My problem is that in order to make sure those characters are as attractive as possible, they're almost always only given what society considers to be the ideal body types. More often than not, they conform almost exactly to the stereotypical model-like physique that we're told by media and each other is perfect. The men are just the right amount of muscular and the women are just the right amount of curvy, and neither are allowed to have an ounce of fat anywhere that isn't quote-unquote appealing. And not only does it perpetuate society's ridiculously narrow, rigid, and flawed standards of what makes a person attractive, it's boring. Because if every beautiful character is conventionally beautiful, they're all gonna end up looking pretty similar, because those standards for beauty are so restrictive that they exclude all but a few physical characteristics. I am desperate for more impossibly gorgeous Mary Sues that are underweight, overweight, or have proportions that the artist finds hot as hell, even if they're not societally ideal. I guess I just want to see more characters that are impossibly beautiful based on what their creators find beautiful, not society. I hate society. So while we are not done talking about beauty-based tropes, we are definitely done talking about beauty standards, because I will probably just evolve into pure misanthropy otherwise. The problem, however, is that my unending list of design grievances doesn't end with the ways that characters are designed to be pretty. No, my intolerant ass also has a problem with number 4. Characters that are always pretty even when it could not ever conceivably make any kind of sense for them to be. Beatrix from Kill Bill is hot as hell. I mean, she's played by Uma Thurman, that kind of goes without saying. But if she had dug her way out of being buried alive and came out with perfect hair, makeup, and not a speck of dirt on her body, I don't think I would have been able to suspend my disbelief long enough not to laugh. And it's not like showing a character being affected by less than attractive circumstances or settings suddenly makes us view them as not gorgeous anymore if they normally are. Seeing Beatrix absolutely covered in dirt didn't suddenly make me think, oh well now she's not hot. It made me think, wow, this incredibly hot person's hotness is temporarily obscured by the 6 feet of dirt she just crawled through, because that's what happens when you survive being buried alive. I'm not about to die on the hill of that's not realistic so it's bad after literally just saying vampires have my full support, but this trope is just so unrealistic that it's immersion breaking for me. Like even in fiction where I wouldn't expect realism, I would still at least expect the lack of realism to follow reasonable rules. If a character just got hit by a bus and set on fire, even if they miraculously recover unrealistically without a single scar afterwards, if they still look perfect while literally on fire, I can't not find that funny rather than impressive, which I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be. Okay, the 6th trope is absolutely gonna make at least one person murderously angry, so hold on and let me explain. Natural, unnatural hair and eye colors in a universe where that's not the standard for everyone. Calm down, I understand. The eye colors and hair colors that human beings are naturally capable of having are boring, and fiction shouldn't be limited to that. I agree completely, and I'm the last person who would drag Mion and Shion from Higurashi for their choice to throw realism in the trash and be born with green hair instead. I have no problem with characters having natural hair colors and eye colors that aren't humanly possible in our world, so long as it is in theirs. If those colors are possible for everyone in that universe to just have naturally, good. Frankly, I would rather live in that world than this one. At least I would have had a chance to be born with a significantly cooler aesthetic. But when every other character in that universe is bound by realistic hair and eye colors, and then you have one character who we're supposed to believe was just naturally born with pink hair and bright yellow eyes with lime green pupils and flecks of every color of the rainbow without any explanation, and no one thinks it's weird, I'm right back where I was with the whole treating vampires like they're normal crisis, because I quite simply cannot accept the idea that no one would find that more than strange enough to comment on. Once again, 100% a me problem that I'm guessing arises primarily from the inexplicable criteria that my brain has for maintaining immersion that even I don't know how to make sense of, but it's just been such a pet peeve of mine for such a long time that I couldn't not include it. I also just finished rewatching Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, and the number of times we see Ramona dyeing her hair makes me feel like showing that more often as an explanation for characters having unnatural hair colors instead is a missed opportunity, because as a contact-wearing cosplayer who spent her teenage years bleaching and dyeing her hair every color imaginable until it was so damaged that it died, I desperately want to see a Mary Sue screeching because their super cool blue hair accidentally turned out green because they didn't bleach it right, or their badass red eyes are contacts that take them at least 3 hours to put in and take out, respectively. It would validate my suffering, it would be funny, and if I get 600,000 signatures on my Change.org petition, all characters with unnatural hair colors will be legally required to have at least one embarrassing scene where they dye it that way and mess it up. The 7th worst Mary Sue art trope is probably another one that I'm the only one in the world taking issue with to this degree, and it's when the character is required to wear the same uniform as everyone else and outright refuses without any consequences at all whatsoever. It's probably residual resentment from having to wear an incredibly ugly Tim Hortons uniform for the entirety of my employment there, but there's a special kind of rage that comes from the idea that I wouldn't have had to if I were an overpowered protagonist and could have instead shown up in a Gengar onesie and lived my best life. The most common example is a cast of characters in School actual uniforms and one character that never wears one, which bugs me on 2 levels. One, I refuse to believe that none of the other characters would take issue with such a blatant double standard. If I was allowed to show up to work every day at Tim Hortons in a Gengar onesie without consequence, while all of my coworkers had to wear what used to be, when I worked there, a very unflattering greenish-brown shirt tucked into comedically high-waisted brown pants and a visor, there is absolutely no way none of them would have just punched me in the face. And number 2, on a purely visual level, it's just counterproductive? I don't know. In my opinion, designing a group of characters to share a uniform allows them to be immediately recognizable as part of the group that requires it, which is effective visual storytelling in a way, and it still allows some freedom for the character to change it up to a degree and suit their preferences and express their individuality. If one single character belongs to that group, but they never wear the uniform that everyone else does, they stick out. They don't look like they belong in that group, and they're not believable or recognizable as one of them, in my opinion, of course. In conclusion, Wolverine was not forced to suffer through wearing the ugly-ass yellow X-Men uniform so that Ebony Darkness Dementia Ravenway could attend Hogwarts because she was the only student in the whole school whose dress code was allowed to be sexy goth rather than cloak. He did not suffer for this. The 8th worst Mary Sue art trope is one that I actually have pretty mixed feelings about, and it's when a character is incredibly strong despite having no visible muscle tone at all whatsoever. From a comedic standpoint, I see this trope's value. I too appreciate when a 5-foot-tall twig of a character flippantly reveals that they can effortlessly wield Pyramid Head's great knife, or pick that cursed Lucifer statue up from the Denver airport with one hand, and hopefully bring it to some lab to be studied by an extensive team of psychologists, cryptozoologists, and art historians, because that's long overdue as far as I'm concerned. And yes, I am suggesting that it's a cryptid, and I don't think that's unreasonable. Anyway, my gripe with this trope, despite its comedic value, is that I feel like when it isn't done to be funny, it's usually done because of the implication that muscles are unattractive, especially with female characters. It's no secret that women have been told for ages that muscles are for men and we should be toned but not too muscular because that's manly and not hot, and that's something that's been filling me with rage for over a decade. Not only do I personally love fitness and dream of one day being as buff as Sifu from Palia, I also think muscles should be viewed as attractive or unattractive based on personal preference, not gender. And in most cases where I've seen this trope being used, it's because they want a female character to be as strong as the males without looking like it, because that would somehow make her less gorgeous. And it's on that basis alone that I take issue with it. Because god damn it, let me have all the buff ladies, it's all I want. Let female characters look like they can bench press a small house. I'm not asking for a lot. Anyway, the number 9 worst Mary Sue art trope is when a character is given a very obviously anachronistic design that does not even vaguely match the culture or time period that they're living in, and the other characters find that cool rather than strange. When Rose started traveling with the Doctor in Doctor Who and wore her very 2010s wardrobe in the 1800s, people around her recognized that that was weird as hell, and companions regularly had to put on clothing that was appropriate for the time period and planet that they were going to throughout the rest of the show. People wearing Victorian dresses weren't like, oh my god, she is so cool, look at her. She's wearing jeans and a hoodie? What a fashion icon that is so ahead of our time. They were like, what in the actual fuck is she wearing and why? And that's a reasonable response, just as it would be if we now in 2024 encountered someone in a Victorian dress. There's a guy in my neighborhood that walks around in a full authentic cowboy outfit every single day, and I guarantee you the vast majority of people witnessing that are thinking, oh my god, this is why I need to leave Alberta, and not, he looks like such a badass. What's cool now in fashion was not cool 200 years ago, nor will it be cool in 200 years. And 90% of people wouldn't look at outlandish outfits that we'd never seen anything like with admiration rather than confusion. Do I want other characters to think my Murdoch Mystery self-insert OC looks cool? Sure. Do I think putting her in my favorite AC/DC shirt is the way to make that happen? No. Finally, we're at number 10, and believe me when I say I saved the best, worst Mary Sue art trope for last. Alexandria's Genesis. If you are young or fortunate enough to not have heard of it, first of all, you are luckier than you know, and you should be grateful for that. Second of all, it's a fictional genetic mutation that I believe started being spread on Tumblr first, back in the 2010s, as if it were real, and a significant number of people actually believed it was. According to the super legitimate information provided by the very trustworthy Tumblr branch of the World Health Organization, people with Alexandria's Genesis are born with blue or gray eyes that turn purple about 6 months after they're born, which looks super cool and has zero negative impact on their vision. They're also hairless other than their face and head, and women who have it don't get periods but can still have kids. It's basically main character disease that comes with the added bonus of giving women actual quality of life. And despite not existing, it was treated as if it did so aggressively that every OC in every piece of art or fanfiction for a good year, at least that I saw, had it. It basically gave people a scientifically sound way to make their character flawless. So that wasn't exactly surprising, but that doesn't make me hate it any less. Not because I have something against purple-eyed characters who never have to shave or buy tampons, but because for one brief moment when I was 10, I thought I had a real chance of becoming a purple-eyed character who would never have to shave or buy tampons. And I don't think I ever fully recovered from the death of that exceptionally short-lived dream. So every character that I see with this goddamn mutation is basically punching my childhood self with their beautiful eyes and their hairless periodless quality quality of life. They're just shoving it right in my face, and I refuse to forgive them for that. And there we have my top 10 worst Mary Sue art tropes. As always, please feel free to share the many ways I've offended you with them in the comments, because that is easily at least 40% of the fun of this series. In the hopefully very near future, I'll be back to offend you even more with the next episodes of it, including the best Mary Sue art tropes, and then the best and worst of video game art tropes, horror art tropes, and hero and villain art tropes. So keep an eye out for that if you enjoyed this video, and check out the rest of the playlist in the meantime. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Special thank you as always to channel members Joseph Solomon, TC Pratt, Zelda Deverak 42, Haruki Saluzzo, King Good James, CP Will Thing, Art of Amethyst Fable, Extinction Animation, and Andy the Hedgehog, as well as patrons Batman, Kai Lowe, Blue Swanson, Cora Fear, Jamisha Walker, Alengshi, Kim Yen, Crazy Isar, Gen Tong, Grayson Xavier, Blomage, TC Pratt, Finn, Celine Merriman, Ash, Aldrichia, The Stray Dog, Ulura, Greg Noble, Decagon, Jenny Chan, Cat Bus, Mac, Lucy Yamajiki, Selena Bibi, Pride A, Totally Shogun, Insomniac Sleep Schedule, Wing Tang Wong, Marie Greer, and Potato, and I'll see you in the next one.